Please, can we let her through? Come on. We're going to be over here with Dan at the podium. Right then here. And then you will lead us through. What's your question?
Somebody needs to fix this, it's falling down. Channel 2, yours is flopping out. Hold on, guys. When you speak, okay. When you speak, stand on the outside. Okay.
Stand to the microphone.
Yeah.
Stand. Okay, we're gonna start up now. My name is Dan Stormer. I'm one of the attorneys representing the family of Charly Keunang. We are here today to announce several things. One is that we have filed our claim against the City of Los Angeles and the individual's officers. And second, that we've also filed a demand with the District Attorney Office for a thorough investigation and criminal prosecution of the officers involved. What we're going to do is I will be speaking first. I will be followed by Charly's mother, Helen Gile, and then we will have Charly's sister speak, Lynn Keunang, followed by Joshua Piovia Scott, followed by two other speakers. The litigation team is on my far left, Reuben Cohen. Next to him is Emmanuel Salai. On my far right is Cindy Panucco, then Sean Holly, and Joshua Piovia Scott. So we will go through and then we will take questions at the end. There will be no questions of the family, but the attorneys and some of the community members will also be available to speak. So we live in troubling times. In the past, we've seen Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, Tamar Rice, Michael Brown, and more recently here in Los Angeles, we've seen Ezell Ford, and we've seen most recently Charles Keunang. All people, all killed by the police. I came to Los Angeles in 1980. The year before I came, a 39-year-old woman named Eula Love, 39 years old, recently widowed, with two young children, was killed when she objected to police officers coming on her property to turn off her utilities. They shot her 8 times. Their response to why they shot her? Well, she had a knife. Now, the evidence showed that she was just, at some point, maybe even reaching for the knife. You had 2 officers, they shot her 8 times. There was a mass outcry within Los Angeles, and that outcry said we have to clean up what's happening with the police. We are now 36 years later, and not a single thing has changed. We still see police officers shooting and killing people like Ezell Ford, like Charly Keunang, claiming that they were reaching for his gun. They had a gun, except no gun ever appears. As I said, this is virtually identical to the Zell Ford. A homeless man with purported mental illness or mental problems who is unarmed is approached by the police and ultimately ends up shot by the police after they approach him. Identical to what happened to Charly Keunang. He did nothing. He was doing nothing. He was on the streets. He was bothering no one. They're the ones that began the process. They're the ones that initiated with force. They're the ones who began this process in a way that resulted in his death. They violated every known principle of interaction with people that you can imagine in a police manual. It is a despicable act that now they claim somehow they were entitled to brutally kill this man. The autopsy which we had done shows that Charly was held down, he was being pummeled, he was being hit with batons, he was being kicked, and they shot him in the chest 4 times, almost like an execution. In the chest 4 times while he's being held down, and they hit his arm twice. The process couldn't be more tainted. We were told by Chief Beck, that these officers were trained in mental health issues. If these officers are the best that the LAPD has to offer, God have mercy on the homeless people with mental illness, because what they did violates every precept of good police practices. It is a violation of everything that the police are supposed to stand for, and is a travesty. This lawsuit seeks justice for Charly Keunang, it seeks justice for his family, and it seeks justice for the people of Los Angeles. This killing has to stop, and we're here to make it stop. We cannot allow this to go further. I'm now, Ms. Child is going to read a statement which will then be translated by Emmanuel Salaya.
Bonjour à tout le monde. La police de Los Angeles a tué mon fils. Sa mort pouvait être évitée. Je suis aujourd'hui sans mon fils. À cause des mauvaises actions de la police de Los Angeles. Mon fils Charly était respectueux, affectueux. Maintenant il est parti. Il est parti pour toujours. Cette situation est très pénible pour moi, pour son père, pour toute la famille. J'ai vu en direct la mort de mon fils à la télé. Sans toutefois savoir que c'était mon fils. Quand il m'a été révélé que c'était mon fils, cette image ne quittera mon esprit. Mon seul fils unique. Je suis sûr que cette image ne quittera pas mon esprit. Ça ne quittera jamais mon esprit.
you want to stand?
Translation of Miss Helen statement from Mama Helen, Charly Keunang's mother. She said, "Greetings to everyone. The police killed my son. He did not have to die. Because of the actions of the Los Angeles Police Department, I am here in Los Angeles without my son. Charly was a thoughtful and caring son. He was my only son and I loved him very much. Now, I do not have a son. This is a very difficult time for my family. I witnessed the killing of my son on TV without knowing it was my son. When I was told that it was my son, those images have never left my spirit. The images keep returning to my mind. The images keep returning to my mind. I will never forget those images.
Charly Keunang, who was killed by LPT, was my only brother. We grew up together in Cameroon. The last death I received from Charly was on February 28th, the day before he died. Charly shouldn't have died. This was a God-created killing. Six police shot my brother 6 times. Officers are not trained to shoot people who get it their way. My brother is dead because of LPT's illegal action. Charly has made some mistake in his life, but was working hard to get back on his feet. It has reconnected with his family. In fact, I had talking to him the day before he was killed, and he was trying to overcome difficult circumstances to become a productive member of society. Because the police killed my brother, he's no longer with my family. I cannot pick up. I can no longer pick up the phone and call him. I will never hear his voice again. My daughter will never know her Uncle Charly. He was a soccer coach for my son. The two of them will talk about soccer, and Charly will teach him over the phone. He was a very good brother. He always protected me. He was younger, but he behaved like a other brother. When Charly visited my family in Boston in June of last year, I felt like I had no strength. I cried when we first see each other, and you wiped my eyes and told me that he will be there forever, that he will protect me just like when we were kids. I'm bringing this lawsuit to make sure that Charly's memory is honored and that the police are held accountable.
Thank you.
God bless Good afternoon. My name is Joshua Piovia Scott. I'm one of the lawyers on the legal team representing Charly's family. This was a cop-created killing. 6 heavily armed, highly trained LAPD officers initiated a violent confrontation with a lone, unarmed, black, homeless man. This incident took place on a sunny Sunday afternoon on a nearby street from where we stand right here today in downtown Los Angeles, surrounded by passersby and pedestrians. Moments after they initiated this violent confrontation with Charly Keunang, the LAPD officers shot him 6 times as they held him down to the concrete sidewalk, 4 times in his chest. We call on the local and federal authorities to thoroughly investigate this incident and to bring criminal charges against the individual officers responsible for this killing. Law enforcement officers are trained to de-escalate situations and to only use lethal force as a very last resort. The officers failed to do that here, breaking several police protocols in the unnecessary struggle with Charly Keunang. Unfortunately, we've seen this failure to de-escalate situations, this over-reliance on excessive force, this again and again killing of unarmed black men in Los Angeles, in Baltimore, and in cities throughout this country. We can clearly see the pain, the sadness, the anger that results from this inability to de-escalate situations, this reliance on excessive force, this repeated shooting and killing of unarmed black men across this country. As a result of the LAPD's reckless misconduct, a mother has lost her son, a father has lost his son, a sister has lost her brother, and a 3-year-old girl will never see her Uncle Charly again. Charly's family will never get to hold him again, will never get to see him again. No one should have to endure the pain of watching their son, their brother, shot and killed on the sidewalk by the LAPD on the evening television news. We filed this case to seek justice for Charly's family and the rest of the victims of this epidemic of police killings.
I'm glad you did this, and I volunteer the mission, and this needs to be done because
So next,
this is wrong.
we will have-
and I'm sorry for you and
This
your
is
family.
Pastor Lavelle
And this
Anu.
has got to stop.
Good afternoon all. I am Prophet Lavelle Anu, and I'm one of the spiritual leaders in the Cameroon community. On behalf of the community, we want to let the mayor and the entire city of Los Angeles, county of Los Angeles, state of California to know that we are really heartbroken. The death of our brother Charly has been hard to bear. The circumstances surrounding his death have been devastating to each and every one of us. It is hard to think that the very people who ought to be watching your back come around you and you get scared. It is hard to think, it is devastating to think that the very people who ought to be looking after you are coming at you with guns pointing at you. We are pleading that justice be done. We are calling on the neighbor, on the mayor, with hope that he will look into this case and investigate and let justice run its course. Being a spiritual leader, when I look at all that is going on, only one thing comes to my mind, the scripture. 1 Samuel chapter 16 from verse 7 and 8. God speaking to Samuel says, man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. But come to think of it, if we are actually created in the image and likeness of God, according to Genesis 1:26, then there is that God factor in us that can let us look beyond the outward appearance to the heart. There is that God factor in us that can let us see beyond the suit and see beyond the skin color to look at the heart. We are calling once more on the mayor to look into this matter and to look with the heart of love, to look with the eyes of justice, and to make sure that our brother Charly rests in peace, that his mother, who is deeply touched by the death of his son, of her son, goes on thinking that she lost a son, but justice has been served. This killing by the LAPD has to stop. Thank you.
So we have an expert on what's happening on Skid Row. This took place as a result of officers from something called SCI, Safer Cities Initiative. And this is not the first circumstance of really, really atrocious behavior by the police department on Skid Row. And Becky Dennison, who is the co-director of Los Angeles Community Action Network, who works primarily on Skid Row, is here to lend us a few words.
Good morning. My name is Becky Dennison and I work with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. We're engaged in community organizing around promoting human rights in the Skid Row community and beyond, particularly working on housing rights and civil rights. We stand here in solidarity and in pain with family members of our brother Charly, who we believe the police murdered in broad daylight on the streets of our community. And the unfortunate situation for us is that while it is shocking and devastating, it's not surprising, because we've seen this level of brutal over-policing, in our community for 8.5 years under the Safer Cities Initiative, which brought between 50 and 110 officers into a 50 square block area to practice broken windows policing. That's a type of policing that treats people as broken, as things and not human beings, as things to be moved out of the new downtown in the most brutal way possible, and in this case, in the most devastating way possible. And so while we stand absolutely in solidarity for justice for the family and for action against these individual officers, we also need justice for the entire Skid Row community. We need to remove the concentration and occupation of police officers from this community and address the extreme poverty that exists in the community. We will not stand for this level of racist and violent policing, and we ask everyone in Los Angeles to not stand for it either. Black Lives Matter, Skid Row Lives Matter, and until we stop this style of policing that leads to the highest use of force in the entire city by far, we will continue to see lives devastated and families devastated. We will not stand for that.
Okay, so we're at Q&A.
Thank you.
Mr. Stormer, how did you arrive at the $20 million figure?
The $20 million figure was arrived at looking at the types of behavior involved in this, of the police actions, prior jury verdicts, and my own experience in presenting cases to the jury. This is an outrageous and atrocious act on behalf of the police, and a jury will see this devastated family having had their lives ruined because of this bad conduct.
So I take it you don't believe any of what the LAPD has said, that in the struggle he went for the gun actually misfired in the holster. You don't believe any of that?
I do not believe that for a second. The video is absolutely clear. There were 6 officers, 4. If you look at the entirety of the video, you start out with simply questioning of a homeless man, and you escalate it into violence, and you see them beating him, tasing him, kicking him, and you see the only person you see initially go for his gun, if you watch the video closely, is the rookie officer who goes up and then gets down on top of him and creates a horrible situation. I mean, this is a cop-created killing. It is something that should never have happened.
Dan, what was the diagnosis, the mental illness diagnosis, and how long ago was it diagnosed?
There was a diagnosis within the system. I'm not certain as to what it was. We don't agree with it. We think that it was a withdrawal from his culture, a removal from his family that caused the emotional problems, and that they are not diagnosable.
So it was on a clinical diagnosis of any kind?
There supposedly was. We don't have that from the Federal Bureau yet.
Was he about to get off Skid Row, or what was his plan?
He had reunited with his family in June of this year. They talked almost daily for the entire time. He was attempting to go back to Cameroon to reestablish his relationship with his family there. He was about to get off Skid Row.
The issue is not if he's mentally ill. This was wrong, and he was murdered. We should have sued for $100 million. This needs to stop. I volunteer downtown.
Just one
This was
second.
wrong.
How critical? Good timing. How critical do you think the video will be to your case?
Oh, the question was, how critical will the video be? It is devastating for the police. Any police practices expert, and we have retained one, will tell you that they violated every basic precept of good policing. If there had been one officer there, Charly Keunang would be alive. Instead, they escalated. Totally up to them.
And there's been inference here that this was racially motivated. Do you believe that's the case, that these officers shot and killed a unarmed black man?
I think the officers have established a profile of who they can use violent force against, and he falls within that profile. And I think it's a racist profile. Any other questions?
Could you talk a little bit about how he ended up there? I mean,
Valley to try to get all the paperwork done that he needed to be down here, and he was in order to further his intent to return to Canada.
what about the different name? He was not under.
That's what he went to prison with. When he came out, he with his family, retook his real name. He retook it for purposes of probation. He retook it for purposes of re-entry into Cameroon.
But the issue is he's a human being. It doesn't matter what he did for a living, what he didn't do. You just ask why he got here. He's a human being. I live downtown. I support the LA mission. This is unnecessary violence. They could have shot him in the knee. That would have brought him to the floor.
Thank you.
They
Thank you,
didn't need to
everyone.
kill
Thank
him.
you for your
That's
support.
the bottom line.
Could we get you with your say a photo ensemble?